as Jeff, doing a video here specifically try to answer a number of questions that are coming up on a number of used guitar lists, especially on Facebook. I moderate a few of them, and answering these questions all the time, writing them down, they get really long, so I just thought it's fast to do a video to explain mainly the used guitar market and what are the factors that you should think about when you want to determine the price that you want to sell it for, the price you want to buy it for. Okay, so I'm talking both from a seller point of view and from a buyer's point of view, because I've bought and sold quite a few used guitars over the past 3-4 years. I've tested a couple hundred and have bought about 20, 25 and sold about 12. Okay, so it's kind of give you an idea of that. Lots of practice doing it. So I've got a number of guitars with me here today, and I'm going to pull up, I'm going to use them as I'm going through and comparing them, okay? So I've got a few different brands, a few different types, different woods to try to go through and give you this information, okay? So the first question is defining what vintage guitar is, and that's not very consistent across different brands. And I'll give an example of that, is that if we take the Takamine here, the Takamine was established in 1962. Okay, so you can't see it very well, but it says right there. Okay, it's 1962. Okay, and most of the Takamines from that period of the 60s, 70s will indicate that, and they'll say inside in the label if they don't. Now, if we take here a Taylor guitar, it's not going to indicate it, but Taylor guitar was established 40 years ago in 1974. Okay, so 62, 74. Now that's quite different time-wise. If you take a Martin guitar, okay, and that one is established in 1833. Okay, now those are just 3 examples. I don't have Gibson here and other brands, but there were a number of brands that were acoustic guitars, and these are acoustic guitars I'm talking about. They came out in the 60s and 70s in entry mid-level guitars that were basically going against Martin. Okay, and so the question of vintage really depends on the brand. If you've got a guitar that's from the 1980s, okay, the word vintage is kind of a fuzzy thing. Some people see 20 years, sometimes 30 years, depends on the brand. A guitar from Takamine that's 30 years old, it's a vintage guitar because the guitar is probably less than 20 years old itself, and the guitar's and you've been playing it for 30 years. Okay, so that's a vintage guitar, could be considered vintage. Same for Taylor. Taylor's only been around for 40 years, so a guitar from the 80s, that's vintage for Taylor. Now Martin, on the other side, has been around for 180 years. Okay, so vintage is not really a 25, 30-year-old guitar, okay? Really, so what you'll see usually used for Martin guitars on that, they'll say it's a 70s guitar. They'll talk about the decade or the actual year, okay? Another way to say it, they'll say, and I'll pull this one here, is they'll refer to the wood type. They'll say, it's a Rio guitar, okay? It's a Rio, it's Brazilian rosewood, okay? So that's how they'll say doing that, because that will indicate that it was up till 1969, okay? And when they stopped using that wood, 69, early 70s, it's 69. It's the exact month isn't real clear, but it's up to 69, okay? Or they'll say pre-war, saying is, before the Second World War. So these are, because they did start those guitars in 1934? Okay, well there's 1916 with the Ditson, but the 1930s was when they came out with the dread, the main dread size. So they'll say pre-war for that if it's before the war. Okay, so those are a few things of determining when you say vintage or not. Now there are examples also of lawsuit. So the standard headstock of Martin is that square head right there. Okay, sometimes the edges are rounded depending if how long they were using those molds or not. And what you'll do is you'll sometimes find a Takamine that's got the same headstock, okay, from the 1970s, very beginning 80s, most models of the F series, and you can say a lawsuit era guitar, okay? So those are words you can use to do that. Be careful with your words. Don't try to use them when they're not applicable, because it confuses people. So think of those words when you're deciding when to say vintage or not, or lawsuit era or not, or be specific. Okay. So those are some things. Now woods, different types of woods. So you've got guitars that are. Be careful when you're saying it. say, you know, everything is pretty much going to have this yellowish top on it. That's spruce. Okay, now you got different kinds of spruce. But look at the talk about the spruce solid top. Not talk about that. Okay, but be careful when you're talking about back and sides. Be clear. This is a maple. Okay, it's tiger flame maple. Say it's maple, okay, and usually be careful when you, especially when you get standard C's guitars. If you've got guitars that are standard, the standard model, you usually don't have to be careful. But if it's a different model or not, you know, then say if it's got Indian rosewood or not, okay, EIR, East Indian rosewood, okay. You just be careful. But usually the standard guitars will have that certain times. But of course, then when there's Brazilian, you know, that Brazilian wood area, then you say it's, you know, Braz or Brazilian rosewood or something like that. That's different from the East Indian rosewood, okay? Now, those are going to be, so be careful in specifying that if the guitars had changed their woods in the time. Now, there's other types of woods. You're going to hear, you're going to have sapele. That's an African type of mahogany, okay? Usually it's matte, satin, okay, satiny finish. That's usually how it is. Sometimes you find it, you know, kind of a gloss, but in most cases it's going to be a matte finish. And then you're going to have sometimes. Here's another Martin. This is a mahogany, American mahogany, satin 15 series. So those are going to be some things that you want to look for. Types of woods. Be clear on your woods what it is. What the top is made of, what the sides and back are made of, what the fingerboard is made of, and the bridge. They're usually the same. What the neck is made of, if you know. Okay, be clear on it. That helps people to know exactly what it is and basically the year. Okay. So and say if it's a gloss top or not. If it's satin, that helps. That's important for the neck, important for the top, the back and sides. That's usually what you're referring to. Okay. Now, let's go to point 3 on the condition of the guitar. This is always something that when they're doing used guitars, people want to know. Words that are used often are mint, excellent, okay. In the electric guitars, you can see relic, okay, because it's style. What I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through the types of things to look for and then talk about it from a player's point of view or collection point of view, and that helps you establish your price, okay? Now, condition is important for the price. Now, there are blue books and different types of guides that kind of give you estimates of prices, but none of these factors will determine what that is, okay, what the price is. And these are some things. So the things you want to ask for first are, does the guitar have any dings in it? So make sure you show that you got dings. So this one's got a little ding right there, okay, right there. Can't see it very closely, but it's a little teeny one there. Well, this is kind of wood usually gets those pretty easily. Okay. Another thing that you want to think about are scratches. Now, scratches, where you're going to find them, what I've checked guitars, is they're usually going to be right here in this area, okay, on the pickguard, and usually out underneath it. That's going to be a place you're going to find scratches. Okay. Another place to look for, and when you're selling it and saying it, are the scratches on the back, based on belt things. Now this guitar is 30, almost 40 years old, and look at that. No, it's hardly any scratches. I played at 1,000 events. I just don't wear a belt, you know. So when if you say it's in great condition, you can say it by looking. There just aren't any scratches on the back, or very little. Okay, so that's something to consider when you're talking about the condition of the guitar. Belt scratches on the back, and where they were. Okay. Dings along the sides, along those things, so those are everything. Another thing to talk about is polishing. Now, the types of guitars you're going to find with, this is one that's actually starting to get it, is especially the satiny finish, strumming, playing like that, and moving your fingers on it when it doesn't have a pick guard is going to polish that. So call that polishing. Another place you're going to find polishing is from your arm that's rubbing around. You're going to find it up here. You're going to find it right here. Okay, that's going to find the polishing. That's right. Seeing a little bit of it happen in this one. And the polishing will actually happen in the back of the neck especially when it's not gloss. Okay, when it's a satiny matte finish. Okay, so those are things to look for to explain the condition of the guitar. Okay, another thing to look for, and I don't have any examples of it happening, but I'll show you where to look for, is bridge lift. Now, what you're going to have usually, let's pull the other one up here because this is that one. There was actually a good example of this on a Taylor guitars. Usually, you're going to look and it's going to have a little bit of a bubble here, just a teeny bit, okay, just a teeny bit. But what you're looking for is really right here. Is there any cracks here? A slight crack at the bottom of this bridge. Can you put anything underneath it? Can you put a Post-it underneath it? Or bigger, or a business card. If you can, then you're getting bridge lift. And that's just tension, the tension of the guitar lifting up over time because the wood's moving, okay? I'm not going to go into all the details of it. There are lots of more details, but that's what you want to look for. So you want to look for is it fairly flat, but you can have a little bit of high lift here, but is the bridge not pulling off of the table or the top, okay? And this is the kind of thing, I'll put it in the back direction here. The kind of thing that you want to really, now my Takamine guitars in the 70s, they don't have it. They just seem to really resist that. But a lot of Martins, people are really concerned, is that bridge lifting or not, okay? Another thing to check for is there is a neck reset, okay? And the way to check for that, a couple things you can look at is just look at the cracks around, look at around here, around the neck where it's attached here. Is there any cracking? Is it begin to separate from the body, okay? And that's one thing you want to look for, or say when you're selling a guitar. Another type of thing you want to do is to check for the reset is the action. Now, a lot of Martin guitars, or some of the Takamines that I've had, or even the old Yamahas, tend to have high action. You know, it's high here at the it's 4 millimeters basically here at the 12th fret. That's high for some people. Some people like it, really low for 2 or something. I don't care being it high. It doesn't bother me. But the one thing you want to do is, when you're playing that 12th fret with the harmonics, is it the same? Is it the same when you're doing it just hovering over it, or if you're pushing down on the fret? And you want to check that. If it's close, really close, then your intonation's pretty good. So you want to be balanced. So the same sound of the harmonic is the same when you're pushing down on that 12th fret. If it is, then your intonation of the guitar should be okay. Another thing to check for is neck straightness. Now this is kind of thing you have to look down at and just see, is the neck fairly straight when you're looking straight down, okay? Is it fairly straight, or is it tweaked, okay? Kind of curved. Now you can adjust that by what is known as the truss rod, a bidirectional truss rod. Now in Martin, before the 80s, 1984, they had a bar truss rod in there, okay? It was a bar, it was not a fixed bar inside, you couldn't do it. But starting in 1984 in the Martins, and even in the 70s in the Takaminis, and I'm not sure exactly when Taylor started doing their truss rods. Maybe they started from the beginning, I'd have to check. Lots of other brands even did it. You've got a truss rod. There's 2 places you can access it. You can go look inside here in the sound hole, and you'll see basically an Allen wrench, socket. And what it's good to do is you take, when you're going to buy a guitar or test it, is just can you turn it slightly? Can you turn it in both directions slightly? You don't want to tweak it hardly much. You just want to make sure, is it still movable? You don't want to have something that's locked, okay? Because you want to be able to tell people the truss rod works, okay? Truss rod is that bidirectional turn. You don't want to turn it too much, really slightly. And I just test it. I just go in and make sure, can I just do like a 1/16th of a turn? Does it turn? Okay, with a little effort. Or not. That's something you want to know about and check, okay? But people won't want you to be playing right because it changes the action. But you just want to make sure you can turn up and down just a little bit, because it happen, okay? That's what I check for when I'm looking for it. Now that's truss rod. Pick guard lift. I do have one guitar, but it's out in the other room. That's a pick guard lift. Especially if pick guards have been replaced or something, is that pick guard here, especially, I've seen it where it's is it bubbling underneath and lifting? Yeah, and that will indicate movement of the wood or something. So is the pick guard moving? And check it. Check it when you're testing guitar. Look at it and see, is that pick guard flat all the way or not? Okay, and that can happen if the pick guard was changed. So you're doing that. Another thing you want to look about is the tuning mechanisms. Now, and you got 2 types. Tell people what kind of tuning mechanism you got, because some models do have different types depending on the year. So these are some butterbean overly open ones. Okay, they kind of look like that. And what I do is I just tune them a little bit when I retune the guitar. Undo them, tune it up a little bit, okay? And other guitars will have, take this one here, this one. They will have some closed mechanisms, okay? So those are closed ones. They're just basically it's oil inside. You can't really do these much without opening up, and I've never opened up mine, so I don't mess with it. The other ones I put a little paraffin in, 1 drop a year or something, and check it. So check the guitar by untuning, detuning. Is it hard? Okay, is it hard to do it? That's something you want to tell people, or that you want to check when you're testing the guitar. Okay. Now, price perspective. If we look at just some other travel guitar things, little travel guitars of the GS Mini here, you want to make sure I forgot one thing too on the intonation or the straightness of the neck. You want to push down here at the 1 fret and at the 12th fret, okay, as well, that finger. You just want to check about 7. There's a little bit of gap here. Let's check if the neck is straight or not, okay? And so travel guitars, same general principles. You might have a check if you got some pickups in here. Check the pickup. Make sure to check the pickup when you're taking a guitar. Test out the amp. Make sure that do. And another thing I do to check things, I bring along a little mini strap with me. Put it on. Play guitar with the strap. Stand up. Try it out. It doesn't hurt. A little strap like this doesn't toss too much. I'll do that. So, what about now the prices here as we're trying to wrap up here on the video, and we don't have something too long, but it gives you all the points to look up, to think about as you're establishing prices. Are these things good or bad for the price? Having dings or having scratches or polished top or arm areas, are these bad for the price? Now, all the things where it's lifting, and I've talked about that affects price. The other thing, like the scratches and dings, and sometimes it can be good or it can be bad for the price. It depends on how you look at it. Now, if you just go pure blue book and just say it's this much and minus things like you do for a car, that's one perspective. But guitars usually get better or sound over time, and they sound better. So it depends if you're aiming at a collectioner audience or if you're aiming at a player audience. Okay. Now, a collectioner audience will usually be nitpicky and say, I don't want anything, the least amount of dings or anything's got in it, the least amount of scratches, the more I'll pay for it. Now, the problem is that player audience, yeah, but it shows it wasn't played. And I've dealt with that too, of arguing on some guitars that I can look at a guitar and say, it's been played because it's got scratches on the top. Hey, it's been played. That means it's actually been sitting, it's not been sitting there not being played, which is not good for a guitar for a period of time. And I bought guitars that I wanted not to have been played for a period of time for a certain specific reason, but I usually want them to be played. And also, you can say, was it, polished here or polished here? It means the guitar's been played, okay? So that's good. Or if it's on this back of the neck, it's been here, it means it's been played. So it depends, really, on how you're positioning the guitar and how you want to sell it. Do you want to sell it to a player, or do you want to sell it to a collectioner? And this will, how these are different points here will be how you position that. I usually, when I'm doing it, I've got 2 different kind of sets, depending who the person is I'm talking to, and what they're looking for, and how to explain it. So hopefully these are a number of topics. There are many more, but I just thought I'd go through and give a number of points for people. Give the serial number. Well, don't give the serial number at the front. Give the beginning of the serial number at the end, just so they can get a range of it, so they can look at it and prove that it's such and such year. Check that. These are things that you just want to give info about. Make a few pictures. Make a video if you can. Videos are really good. They really sells the guitar quite well. From my experience, letting people hear it and play it. Have somebody play it for okay, pretty decently. But the pictures, what I usually do also, when I take pictures of the guitar, I take a full front picture like this, take a full back picture like that. Usually I just take a couple pictures of the sides like that. I take a picture of the back of the headstock, take a picture of the front of the headstock, take a picture of the I take a picture really close up right there to check for the neck reset. One thing I didn't mention is just if you've got any divots, sorry, in the frets. Frettage is usually something that people check through. I just kind of spread undo the tension on the tuning mechanisms, undo the strings, and then show pictures of the frets pretty closely. Show what the fret usage is. Again, sometimes, you know, these are things that are impacting. Just take a few pictures of the guitar, you know, 10, 15 pictures with the case. That usually helps to sell it a little bit better. Another really important point when you're selling the guitar is talk about what kind of case you got. And I've got several of them here I want to quickly show. Make sure that you clarify that, because specify that, because that will influence people's decisions. The one type that is we've got here is what is known as the gig bag, okay, and that's usually some kind of soft case. It's got it's going to have just a minimal amount of lining. They're all different types, but it's got a minimal amount of lining inside and for the guitar, and some are a little bit thicker than others. Some are really thin, and others are thicker. This is a little bit thicker, got a pocket on it, and it usually becomes some back straps depending on the guitar. Okay, that's called a gig bag usually. Another type here is just similar to the gig bag because it usually comes with backpack straps and stuff too. Okay, but you'll have front pockets. But this is what's known as a semi-rigid, okay, guitar. And what it is that it's not just soft case. It's got very thick walls here, but it's still light. Okay, so. But it's a styrofoam inside it, and then it's got lining. So this is usually called a semi-rigid, or okay, so a semi-hard case. Okay, so that's usually what we call that one. Another type that we've got here. This one is a standard hard shell case. Okay, there's the Martin 1 hard shell. There are different numbers and all that, depending on the size of the guitar and all that. But usually have clasps. It's got, you know, the different clasps here. Some are double clasps. Other ones are just single pop down, okay, depending on the brand. And there are older ones as well. So this is usually one hard shell. Now there are different ones that are thin hard shells and really thick hard shells. Okay, so the thin hard shells are usually from back, but hard cases are back from the 1970s. It's that kind of earlier. Most of them since then have become what we call just a hard shell case. Okay. And then the last one, and the different brands have used these in different times. These are usually called SKBs or plastic mold or like that, and it's usually kind of rounded, aerodynamic kind of look. Okay, a little bit lighter than a wooden hard shell, and depending. Usually double clasps on it, sometimes locks on it. Okay. Having key is important too. If you got one of these, if you got the key or not, that helps the price of the guitar. And then I know Martin and Taylor and other brands have actually done these at certain points in time. They come back to the wood, so the wood cases. So specify the type of case that you got with the guitar that helps for the people to go ahead and decide. A person decide if they need to get a case along with it because they want a hard case and it's only got a gig bag, or if it comes along with it for all those types of reasons. So be clear, be specified what kind of case you've got. Another thing to look at when you're deciding what the price you want to sell your guitar for is look up what the current used prices are, not just in the blue books or what they're estimated for. Those are evaluations or kind of estimates. But look in stores, online stores, look on eBay or other types of Craigslist or equivalents in other countries of how much that model is actually selling for. That will give you an indicator of kind of the range that you can aim in based on all these other topics I've talked about here in the video. But realize that, and look at that carefully. Look over a period of time too, if it's possible. I've seen shifts over 2, 3, 4 years of actual cost prices of guitar and used ones. They'll go at certain shifting depending on other factors. Another thing is that if there's only one guitar in the market of that model, it's easier to sell it for a certain price. If there are several, then you're affected by the market share, how much, with other ones, it's competition. So those things will affect exactly the price of the guitar. So, and do realize that there has been new prices have actually gone down. I don't have the guitar here. I've got one of my Taylors, but I actually bought I've got a guitar from 2001 with the new price was certain. You had list price and street price at back in time, but then you can see based on new prices that they were set in the mid 2000s. I knew how much it was then, and I can look at how much it costs now of the same guitar. But there has been a decline, or the cost of a new guitar for the same model has gone down because of the internet, mass buying, volume buying, and then people will sell them. So they've got big discounts. So it's not if basically if we had small stores all over the place, still today, those guitar prices probably would have remained stable. But it's all of the social networking, mass volume, online buying, which has actually impacted the cost of the new guitars going down. But but you will have something going backward. Certain guitars, like some Martins right now, a Martin HD20 or a D28 from the 70s, pretty much costs the same as almost a brand new one today, because if it's been played and it's in great condition. So these are factors you want to look at. But a Taylor, you're going to see a decline in some of the new prices, and when you want to look at two is the used price should not be 50% of the current new price, but 50 list price, but 50% in general, possibly, of the list price back when it was bought, because that new list price has gone down because of the internet factors. So these are kind of things you want to keep in mind. Now, there are no set exact numbers, figures of how much each one should be, but these are kind of general tendencies and what people say it should be buying when you're buying it. Also, a thing is that there's a lot more volume buying in the States, US, so a lot more players and a lot more volume, and so the prices are a lot more competition, so the prices are lower than elsewhere. But then you got to add customs in, shipping in, and all that to get it to your country, and so it's going to be just as much or even more than buying it in country. That's my experience. If you're going to have it shipped, it's just usually not worth it, unless you go to a really high level. But you know, $1,000, $1,500, it's pretty much the same price as if you just bought it in the country, from my experience, at least in France. So, hope these different topics will help you in like we just said, to go ahead and position the price of the guitar, buying it and selling it.